Hello, Councilwoman. We're just waiting a couple more minutes for additional folks to join, and then we'll get the meeting started. Eric, how are you?
Mr. Wolf, how are you, sir?
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to call this December 2nd meeting of the Hartford Charter Revision Commission to order at 7:01 p.m. And we'll start with a roll call. I am present. Raul de Jesus Jr., John Gale, Alex Aponte, Arunan Arulampalam, Steve Bonafante, Vicky Gallen Clark,
Present.
Kamora Harrington,
Present.
Ken Kennedy, Kathleen Kowalishin, Melvin Medina, Yadira Rivera, Bruce Rubenstein, Ian Smith.
Present.
And I see Commissioner Rivera has joined us.
Hi, hello, everyone.
Hello. All right, so we do not have a quorum as of now. I know there's a lot going on this time of year, and there are a couple of commissioners who informed us beforehand that they won't be present or maybe running a little late. So we will come back to the approval of the minutes from November 18th, 2021, when a quorum is established this evening. And I also want to recognize that Commissioner de Jesus has joined us as well, and I will note that for attendance purposes. Good evening, Commissioner.
Evening.
Okay. So the third item on our agenda is a discussion with City Council members regarding boards and commissions. And so tonight we're continuing our discussion of boards and commissions. Some of the ideas that were presented to us and the options for the Charter Revision Commission to take a look at from Attorney Mednick had to do with items that come under the power of the clerk's office and had to do with things that the clerk deals with. So we have the city clerk here, as well as Eric Lusa from his office. And then we have council members here because a number of the council members had raised issues with the way our boards and commissions operated. And so we wanted to ensure that they had the opportunity this evening to voice those concerns. And so that is what we will start with right now, the discussion with council members regarding boards and commissions. And we will start with Councilman Clark. And Councilman Clark, if you can hear me, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Attorney Wolf. Thank you for having myself and the rest of my council colleagues that are on. I believe I saw Councilwoman Surgeon and Councilman LeBron. Good evening to the rest of the commissioners and also to Attorney Mednick. Please excuse me for not having my camera on. I'm actually driving, so I don't have any light in the car. But in regards to boards and commissions, thank you for bringing up this topic. And I would respectfully ask the commissioners to really take a look at how the boards and commissions are currently structured in our charter, with the fact that majority of the boards and commissions are appointed by our chief elected official, the mayor, and they are confirmed by city council. And then there are very few boards and commissions that council actually has direct appointments without relying on the mayor to offer up an appointment, and we provide confirmation. But I would really urge the commissioners to really look into how we can actually have some type of balance of power and allow the city council to provide its own appointments on many of these boards and commissions. Because there are a tremendous, if you talk to a lot of people who would like to be interested in serving in our city on the board or commission, there's a lot of interest, but the problem is there's a lot of dormancy within our boards and commissions. And the only way that these boards and commissions can be revived is if our mayor does, or whoever the mayor would be, would appoint these individuals, and we provide the confirmation. So I think it's very important that you really take a look at how that there can be a shifting in that. Also, too, my recommendation would be some of these boards and commissions, particularly planning and zoning, under the last charter revision, I believe, and Attorney Metnick or Attorney Rubenstein might be able to correct me, where the zoning was taken away out of the council under the old form of government, and it was placed in the Planning and Zoning Commission. That is one commission that is an autonomous, it's an autonomous body, and whatever decisions that they make, the council does not have any type of say so whatsoever. And so,
TJ, if I could, I think that was mandated by state statute. When we revised the charter, we didn't have a choice. We had to give planning. We had council had to lose the zoning authority. That was my understanding. I could be wrong. Attorney Mendeck may know more about that than myself, but I think that's what happened.
Gotcha. So under that, whatever that statute is, there's no way maybe to put in the charter to offer up an amendment for them referring back an item to council for final approval.
I think what you could do in terms of balance of power there, TJ, and I think maybe you should send the commission a list of agencies or appointments you're interested in. Obviously, you're not interested in all of them.
Right.
But maybe you could, the ones you're interested in, and then we could talk about how we balance it out in terms of the appointments.
Okay, I can definitely do that. We definitely can get some together. And my final point is some of these some of the boards and commissions do have a little bit more power and weight than others, and those are ones that I would actually send a list to based upon the recommendation of Attorney Kennedy to offer up to you as a thought as to how we can actually shift some of the things so that the council can actually have some direct appointments to these.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. Does anyone else have any questions for Councilman Clark?
I don't have a question for Councilman Clark. I have a question for Attorney Metnick. Was this indeed mandated by state statute?
I'd have to go back and look at what we did. We were probably operating under special act language, and at some point we moved to the state Title VIII planning and zoning structure. And once you give up your special act, you can't go back. So but I'd have to go back and look at the history of that. If you had a special act, most statutes do not eradicate special acts. They adopt the statute and unless they specifically want to do that. But I know for a fact that that's not happened because New Haven still operates under their special act. So I think we willingly gave up the authority. I can't remember whether it was 2002 or one of our later commissions, but I'd have to go back and look at that.
I would say it's 2002, Council, if I recall. Yeah. I remember that it's a little bit phrased a little bit differently now, but basically, if we had a charter change and we went to this structure, and that was the council versus strong mayor, that we were going to lose our zoning authority. Because my first 2 years on council, we were the zoning there was a zoning commission, but the council had the final say. And that was lost at that point.
Yeah, I believe it was 2002, but I think we willingly gave it up. The state could not mandate that we would give it up.
Willingly is it depends on how you.
Well, somebody made a political judgment to give it up.
Yes.
It was adopted by the voters.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. Commissioner DeJesus?
All right, so yes, the authority is under a state statute. I think the overall consensus here is council being able to appoint. I don't see in that statute, it's in that statute 8-20, 8-10, all that area where the state statute regulates the zoning board and how it's set up. It does not prevent the city council itself appointing the members. The members will still need to meet the criteria of the specialties that the council will be looking for. And that can change over time. So if we're doing major developments, we're gonna need a set of skills for that term. And so it does not prevent us from saying council can appoint those appointees. I don't think council, Amanda, if I could be mistaken, if he's still online, a majority leader is not saying taking the power. I think he is asking for having some representation there that council can rely on. I think if I'm not mistaken, he'd probably clear that up, but I think he's more leaning towards the appointment of those appointees there.
I'm still on. So to your point, yes, I'm looking for council to have, and such as more commissions, such as planning and zoning, to have the ability to appoint people on, in addition to the mayor, so that there, the balance of power there can be a little shift in balance of power, and also too, which is the other ask, if it is allowable under state statute for anything that is any decision that is made by the Planning and Zoning Commission, that it should be referred back to the council if allowable for final approval.
And if I may, through the chair, there is a mechanism there through 8-24, which is a review in which we send a document, or the municipality sends a project into the planning and zoning. The only way that you can override it is usually by 2/3 vote of council to override one of their decisions. So there is a mechanism where that state statute allows you to override it. Actually, during our time, I had a similar project and we killed it in planning and zoning. So there is a mechanism to do that. But I think we're gonna have to fine tune what are gonna be our powers. But there is a mechanism to override some of their decisions when it comes to city business, direct city business, right?
Yes, Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you, through the chair. TJ, I get your point. I mean, I think it's when the mayor has all the appointing authority. I mean, what was one of the nice things we used to have on councils, and we still do, is the MDC. Because council appoints the MDC, the MDC commissioners. Obviously, the mayor has input into that, but we could obviously set up some kind of structure like that where the council gets a say in some of the boards and commissions that you think are more appropriate for council's input. Number of appointments. I don't think you want to take the authority away for appointments from the mayor completely, as I'm understanding you, but you want council to have a say maybe in some of those appointments, and I'm excluding the Board of Ed from this conversation. You're talking about probably economic development, planning and zoning. I'm not sure what other ones you have in mind.
Those are the ones that yes, to your point, yes, that I was thinking of. Yes,
redevelopment
I purposely did not mention Board of Ed. Redevelopment agency. So more things that have to do with infrastructure and development of our city. Then also too, for example, since as relatively new, the PAR board, the Police Accountability Review Board, even though that was resolution authored by myself and signed off by the rest of my council colleagues, it was the mayor that was the appointing authority of the recommendations, but he ultimately was the appointing authority that we had to, and then we had to confirm those appointments.
I mean, depending on the new structure of the police department, there's been talk of a commission, going to a commission system. That may change some of that with respect to the newly created board. So, I mean, I think that'll just depend on what the structure is, and then how you incorporate that new board that you authored, how that would fit into a commission type, commissioner type system for the police department.
Yeah.
Fire. So no, I get where you're coming from, and it probably, on a local point of view, I think Attorney Taylor may have missed some of the. I was where you were a few years ago when Attorney Taylor was running the charter, and he wanted all the appointed authority within the mayor. And I think I'm not sure that was the smartest thing to do at that point. Not for local government anyway.
Gotcha. But I definitely will, to your suggestion too, send to the chair and Attorney Mendick, and they can disseminate this to you all, those board/commissions that I would recommend for council appointments.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful. And the one other thing, and if it's something that you've given thought to, I think, we'll need to give some thought to how many appointments council gets versus how many the mayor keeps.
Yeah.
And so if you have thoughts on that, I think there will be a lot of discussion on that, but if you do have some initial thoughts, that'd be welcome as well. Attorney Mendick, you have a comment.
I do. It's similar to your question, Mr. Chairman, for the majority leader. If the council gets appointments, if we were to move in that direction, what would we do about advise and consent on the mayor's appointments? Would you retain an advice and consent role for the mayor's appointments and have your appointments as well? Or would the mayor be making appointments without advice and consent?
Attorney Mendick, that is a good question. I think that calls for some further thought. Right. To see exactly how that would look. I do respect that deep thought analysis in that. But yeah, and I definitely would have to take a look at to see from the local legislative body how that actually works in other municipalities, if there's something that actually is already some framework that's already there.
What I'll do is I'll prepare for the commission a breakdown of how the other large cities deal with these appointments. You'll find that most of them are done the way Hartford does them. Chairman Taylor, Attorney Taylor, didn't pull this out of thin air. This is the way it's done in most municipalities. One of the other models we might look at that the chair is, I'm sure, aware of, and I'm sure that Commissioner Kennedy and anybody else who deals with the state is aware of, is you do have a lot of joint executive legislative appointments in Hartford. And many of them are made by office holders within the legislative body. In fact, the overwhelming majority on some of these boards and commissions are appointed by the legislature. I'm not sure they go through advice and consent, but the president pro tem, the speaker, the minority leader get appointments, and the governor. So the governor gets 1 out of 5 as a rule. Now, again, I'll look at the other appointments throughout the state, and I think we have flexibility here, but I think you'll find that this is going to be a unique structure if we move in this direction.
Great. Commissioner Kennedy.
With respect to the question that was raised by Attorney Mendick, I mean, just to speak to my fellow commissioners, I'd like for the council to retain, if we do give the council the ability to appoint people to certain positions like we do with the MDC, it's still a majority vote of the council for that person, whoever puts in the resolutions for those appointments, to still get the 5 votes in our current structure for that person to be appointed. When we made the appointments to the MDC, for example, with leadership, I discussed Jean Holloway. Jean needed 5 votes, even though she worked for me, and she still needed the 5 votes to get on, despite being sponsored by the council president at the time and several members of the city council. And went through the process where she was reviewed by the committee before being voted upon. I still think that's an appropriate process. As for the Attorney Mendick is correct. There are several boards and commissions within the state that are appointed by the Speaker of the House that gets an appointment, President Pro Tem, Minority Leader. That's an interesting structure. Depends on the size of City Council and the size of the boards. You know, how many appointments are there? I don't object to that. I think the whole purpose of this discussion is to balance the power dynamic between the legislative body and the executive. I think many people in Hartford feel that the executive has way too much authority. And that given the money that has to be raised by the executive to even run for office, that is excluding a lot of the other communities in Hartford from having even the possibility of having a member of their community even be the chief executive of the city. And the only way to balance that is through leveling out that power with the legislative body. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I've had several discussions with people about different things. Some of them very excited about, some not so much. But again, it's all with the goal of trying to balance the power. Even the letter you showed us recently, Mr. Chairman, that was sent out, it was all about trying to balance the power between the chief executive and our local legislative body. I think that's the goal. Everything I hear goes toward that discussion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. And if there are no other questions for Councilman Clark, we can move on to Councilwoman Surgeon, who has her hand raised and I'm sure has some opinions on these issues as well. And I also want to recognize that we have Councilman LeBron here listening in, and he certainly has the opportunity to speak afterwards if he would like to as well. But Councilwoman Surgeon, welcome, and you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank all the commissioners for your due diligence in doing this for us. I really want to say a heartfelt thank you. I want to second everything our Majority Leader Clark had to say regarding boards and commission. One of the things where I raised my hands regarding jumping in, and I think Commissioner Kennedy voiced my what I wanted was to say regarding a balance of power. One of the things I have found out as we go into the community, a lot of the residents and voters in the city are not aware of the different boards and commission, and they look for council or the mayor to be the ones, or they think they're the ones who make these decisions. And I think more than anything else right now, as a good example, we had a regarding the cannabis bill, and there was an article in the Hartford Current, received several phone calls, and why is not council making the decision regarding where we may set up stores. So I think a balance of power and being able to have a more say. One of the things that I have found to be very difficult is when we do appointments, or appointments are referred to us for boards and commissions, we only have 60 days. So it comes on the agenda, with the resume. The council members are not privy to meeting the individual until the item is actually referred to the committee. A committee will only meet once a month. And so you are actually truly rushing. So within that 60 days, you have to, or not have to, but you have to confirm that person. And then by the time you look around, if you do not do it within the 60 days, the person is automatically appointed. So specifically, would like to take a look at the, a little bit more time regarding the appointments, because it's a little bit more difficult to get that done within 60 days. Certainly, will join the Majority Leader and include some of the boards and commissioners, which I would like to see, example, redevelopment, economic development, to actually take a look at it. If the city has given away the structure to make sure the redevelopment, we have a commission. I think once the conversation regarding how it would be appointed, I like the state, the way the state appoints, the executive branch and the leadership in council, or the state representative gets an appointment. So I believe that is an excellent model to follow. So, and if that's not the model, but I really don't know how I would recommend regarding a balance or share of power. But what I do know it does affect council is that the voters are looking for council to also have a checks and balance on leadership and roles within the city. So that's one of the major issues that I would like to see the commissioners address, come back with some ideas on how we can possibly get that done. And I was, as I said, I'll certainly second everything our majority leader has said. And I think that one of the most important commissions that we have really affects the businesses and also residents in the city is the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman. Any questions or comments for Councilwoman Surgeon? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Councilwoman. We will move on to Councilman LeBron. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank all the commissioners for taking your time and dedicating yourself to something as important as this Charter Review Commission. I also want to thank my council colleagues for jumping on and understanding the importance, particularly around boards and commissions. So I'm not going to differ at all from Majority Leader Clark or Councilwoman Surgeon. I absolutely agree with all of the things that they said. So I don't want to reiterate that because I want to be respectful of people's time. What I will say regarding boards and commission is a couple things, is that what I think the common theme here is that at the baseline of these things, if we don't look into change these things, I know we use the terms balancing of power and, you know, committees and do we approve and this and that. But I think in the current construct, what's happening is what we're seeing is we have the same archetype of a person that are on the boards of commissions under the current design. And to expound on that, what I mean is we really need to consider, you know, everyone's voice at the table. Former Councilman Kennedy, Attorney Kennedy, you know, mentioned like, you know, the representation of different communities, particularly in the executive office. So I'll comment to that after, but it's also reflective of having our communities involved in boards and commissions from different areas. And so let me go a little bit further in that. In my career in human services and as a lobbyist and a community organizer, one of the things that I've always been an advocate of is having folks that are at the table that are fully vested, you know, and the opportunity for them to have access to the table. And so when we look at that, the current construct as it is, you have to have someone that, you know, potentially if we're meeting face to face, they have their own vehicles. You have to have someone who has a monetary opportunities to provide childcare if they're parents. You know, normally these boards and commissions are done not during conducive times. And so what this does is it really excludes a large majority of our population, and more, I wouldn't say intentionally, but as an offshoot of that, the people that have financial hardships or don't have the ability to pay for transportation to get to the meetings, to the buses, you know, don't have the ability to pay for childcare. And so we really need to consider those things as well for the boards and commissions on top of what Councilwoman Surgeon and the Majority Leader proposed. Like, let's make it even greater opportunity alongside leveraging power. And in regards to the chief executive officer or the mayor, you know, we need to explore what that really means. Is it a seat that that is designed or intended that you got to raise the most money in order to get the seat? And I know we have to understand that, you know, money's a part of it, but it shouldn't be the only part. And it shouldn't play such a significant part. And so I know at the state level, they talk that there's public financing. And I think we need to really consider that, so that way we can have people and opportunities for people at the table. This should not be a money raising efforts. And at the end of the day, I get it. It's the citizens that vote, you know, and all of those things. But there's a reason why, you know, in corporate America or in our capitalist systems, that these larger organizations continue to grow. And that's because they have the finances to continue marketing. And so are we talking about raising money to market and effectively market a mayoral position? Because that's what the intention is. And so we need to kind of create a system of equity where folks who have talent and have the ability to be chief executive officer, but may not be able to raise those resources because they don't have those connections, if you will. So I'm going a little bit beyond the boards and commissions. And yes, we should have more appointments. We should have more seats. I'm sure you guys are going to dive into it. You'll talk, whatever you guys recommend, I trust and believe, your efforts on doing it, but we need to really consider everything. And are we giving everyone an opportunity? The single dad on Barber Street who has to make a choice of going to a board or commission, or it's dinner time. How about having dinner at that meeting, right? Where like now all of a sudden he could bring his child and they could have dinner. And so now he can really be focused. Or the Peruvian family on Franklin Avenue who has to make a decision around childcare. And if not, then they can't make it to a board and commission. Their voices matter. Their voices are important. It shouldn't be folks who have the stability. Now, time is of the essence. Like that's a given. Like you have to have the ability to give time, but with all of these things, it shouldn't be voices shouldn't be solely dependent on your financial stability.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for those sentiments and those comments, Councilman. Any comments or questions for Councilman LeBron on that? Councilman LeBron, I do want to make one comment specifically with regards to public financing. It was something that came up at the beginning of our conversation here on the Charter Revision Commission, and we have identified it as an issue that would require a special act of the General Assembly to allow it here in Hartford. There is some precedent for it. New Haven has public financing for their municipal elections. And when we briefly discussed it at the beginning of this process, I won't speak for the rest of the body, but I think there seemed to be a general consensus that public financing here in Hartford of the ideas that were discussed at that time that would be something that we'd look into as a recommendation to the legislature for a special act. I think that was one of the top ones, if not the top one. And so that's something we'll certainly take a look at through this process.
You guys are on it. That's awesome. That's why you guys are there. That's why you guys got selected. So thank you for that update. I appreciate that. And I think, seeing folks' videos and they're nodding in their heads in affirmation, I think, we're all dedicated to the city, right? But not all of us have access to create change, and there are reasons why. And so whatever it takes to overcome those barriers to create change through people's voices, you could count me in.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Gallen-Clark has a question.
So I wanted to say before Councilman LeBron left or Councilwoman Surgeon, I don't see Majority Leader Clark. I guess he had to leave. But I wanted to say thank you for coming on. And thank you. There's a biblical term, it's called the voice that's crying in the wilderness. And so it's really like you don't hear a lot of people talk about the everyday, the grassroots people who need to be represented, who need a chance to have their voices heard. And so I just want to tell both of you, thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing these concerns to make sure there's equity across the board. And just thank you for what you do, for being the voice of the people. So thank you.
Thank you.
If I might add,
Councilwoman Sturgeon. Yes.
yeah, I
yes.
just wanted was to add and second Councilman LeBron's comment. I didn't know you guys were talking about campaign finance, and certainly New Haven has a good example of that, for an urban area. So I was shaking my head as Councilman LeBron was talking, because I certainly do, I agree with that, those sentiments that everyone should be around the table, and the timing of the commissions. Basically, the commissions each choose their time and dates that they, would like to meet. So I think it's up to us as council persons, to talk to the different commissions and say, to make things more equitable, in the evenings. And one of the things I remember, Councilman LeBron, we had talked about during the budget was putting some, funds, for, now we're Zooming, if it wasn't for the pandemic, but most meetings are at 7 o'clock in the evenings or 5 in the evenings, and people are running in, to come to a commission meeting or a board meeting, and dragging the kids along with them, so, those are things, we as council, can take a look at when we do our budget. Nothing, precludes us from actually, putting additional funds in for those commissions. But one of the things I do want to just add, and I know time is of essence, and thank you guys for your time, is we do hear those issues and concerns in the community. It is extremely valuable that the boards and commissions are really taking a look at, especially the boards or the commission that actually touches the community, personally, especially the zoning issues. That is that the business community, zoning changes are made. I know there's an opportunity, once the commission makes a decision regarding zoning, you can go and you can, argue for a waiver. But that's it. We're the council, more than anything else, not the members of the boards and commissions, are actually talking to the residents every single day. They're the ones who are actually calling us, and so it really behooves that, as we look at making everything fair and equitable across the table in our city, that we are more actively, or the council is more intimately and actively involved in those decision-making that really touches the residents more personable. So I just want to thank you guys very much for giving me the opportunity for actually coming and offering my my sentiments, my thoughts. And I want to also thank you all for the time that you're putting into this, for everything that you're doing on behalf of the residents of the city. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for having me.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you, Councilman LeBron and Mr. Majority Leader. I know he had to step off, but thank you to him as well. And have a great evening. And
yeah, you guys have a great evening. I'm gonna tune in on the Facebook side, so I'll hop off the Zoom and then watch you guys on the Facebook side. Everybody have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, and I'm going to just listen.
Yeah, and the other thing, if I don't get to see everyone have a fantastic holiday as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. On to our next item of discussion tonight. We have a discussion with the city clerk, and we are going to discuss this evening some of the new and exciting things that the clerk's office is the technology capabilities that the clerk's office has, and how that may impact some of the recommendations that were put forth at our last meeting, particularly with regards to how we're tracking vacancies on boards and commissions, the current membership of boards and commissions, email addresses, things like that. So tonight we have the city clerk, Noel McGregor, and we have Eric Lusa from the clerk's office as well here to discuss the clerk's office and their new technology, and then also to respond to some of the ideas that were in our PowerPoint at our last meeting, which I was able to share with them. So Mr. Clerk, you have the floor. And I think you're on mute.
I have two mute buttons. Sorry. Good evening, Commissioner Wolf and the rest of the commissioners, Attorney Mednick. It's good to be here and to share with you some of the things that we are doing. I want to start out by just giving you a little history of as my role as the town clerk. When I was being interviewed, I recognized that the board and commission was in disarray and that it was really outdated, having looked at that, trying to find information that something needed to be done. When I became the town clerk and COVID-19 came in and the special election where we had to put all our resources and conducting the safe election, we didn't get to it until after the election of last year. When that happened, we were blessed with some grant money, and we started searching for a civic engagement software, council management, boards and commission. And we decided on iCompass. It's a diligent company. It's was one of the most easier to use, and the civic engagement piece was outstanding. Our desire is to expand civic engagement. That was part of the grant that we received. So that's why we looked at that. So we implemented the council management software is in operation now. And we are now in the process of configuring the boards and commission piece so that it is tailored to our needs. And some of the questions and some of the ideas that came up from the commission, we are in the process of answering those questions. When we look on page 6 of the part where the boards and commission, the clerk shall make certain that each board and commission has a clerk assigned to serve in that function. That's a little bit difficult because it's not so plain that we have the staff in our office to do that. As you are aware, the city staffs the various commissions based on their department and the function of that department. That's where some of the commissions lie. We have maybe 1 or 2 staff people that maybe that's all they do is boards and commission. There are currently approximately 43 active boards and commission and approximately 17 inactive. So there's a lot of boards and commission that have to be staffed, and that just is not possible with the clerk's office where we are now. But one of the things though that we have, this software will make it easy to track the various vacancies, expirations, updates on a more timely manner. I don't know if you're aware, this is a book that is published by the clerk's office. It's supposed to be every October. And to maintain that in this portion was ludicrous. So we're going to a digital version where everything will be able to be updated on a timely manner so that you don't have to wait until you want to print another book. And all these things will be accessed through the portal that we have with the iCompass software. We'll be able to have applications on the site that people who are interested in serving on boards and commission will be able to go to the site and fill out the application and be forwarded to the appointing authority. One of the things that we were able to do right off the bat is that we had a distribution list of people who were interested in the various boards, commissions, council agendas and so forth. Approximately 250 or so people, I believe, are correct, right, Eric? It's not. Since we've had iCompass, we dropped the 6,000 more into the portal. And it's able to send out that message. You can sign up for whatever board, commission, or whatever council meeting that you want to attend. You can sign up for that and you will get the blast whenever they upload it into the iCompass for the next meeting. And you'll get that blast to your email and you click right on the link. I don't know if any of all of you have went on the site yet, but please do, because when you pull up the council agenda, you click right on it and it goes right to the item. And then we'll be able to track the votes online where people know where the council people voted and where the on the boards and commission. We hope to have that same feature in there where you'll see where the board is voting, what they're voting for, and it'll be pretty much in real time. I'd rather field some questions between myself and Eric. Hopefully we can answer all your questions, but we are in agreement that a lot of the things that you are suggesting will be able to do in the iCompass software. Some of the things, it's a little bit more complicated. When you have 43 active boards, 17 inactive, and you want to have staff for each of those boards, it's very difficult to say that it would be the clerk's responsibility to staff. That would be impossible with the manpower that we have now. So I'd like to, I would receive any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So you're saying that and this language that Attorney Medic put forward was just, ideas that, came from elsewhere. And so what you're saying is there is a process in place that's similar to this, but it's not the clerk's office that's staffing, it's the mayor's office, and whatever department that is engaging with the various boards and commissions, there's a staffer from that department that's covering that board and commission and sending you all the minutes, the agendas, things like that.
That is correct. Let me just add to that. One of the things that we discussed that in our session with the iCompass staff person who are helping us to develop this is that we want to standardize all of our agendas and so that there's not 43 different formats, so that when you look at one agenda, you know where to find the items outside of some of the specialized ones that, like park and the Civilian Police Review Board and maybe zoning that may have a special need. But most of them we want to standardize so that it's the same format, no matter who's looking at it and who's doing it.
Okay.
But you are correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. I have some additional questions, but I'll hold off. Commissioner Rivera.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. Through you, I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
So my question is, I myself participated in the Women's Commission for 2 years. And prior to that, I am very active in the city with community organizing. And I did not know about the commissions until I was approached by someone who thought I would be a great fit for it and wanted to appoint me to it. And my question is, I hear you say that there's commissions who are active, but then there are commissions that are not active. What is the process with outreach to the community? How are these commissions being outreach to actually, different neighborhoods, residents, people who are active in the city, organizations who are dealing with actual residents? Are these commissions being, talked about, or is the open positions are being shared actively, and how often to residents in the city?
I can't fully answer that question because we don't appoint anyone. We are the keepers of the records. But there's one of the things that we looked at when we applied for the grant that we received. And one of the things that we plan to do is we're partnering with Hartford Public Library and to do a campaign of civic engagement. We still have some money left in the grant. So we were hoping that and the importance of elections, that stuff would go out, and would partner with the library who has a resource to in the different branches to utilize that. We have to remember that the appointing authority for most of the boards and commission is the mayor's office, and they have an office of civic engagement. So I would refer to them as far as how does that get out there. And we will do our part to try to help that. And I think the software that we have in place would really help that, but we still have to get that message out that it's there and you can, where you can find the information.
And just for clarification, not everyone needs to be appointed, right? Residents can apply to be on these commissions without being appointed?
Sorry, that is correct. There will be an application on the site once we get it fully up and operational, and those applications will be forwarded to whoever the appointing authority is.
But just to be clear, once a person has applied to the appointing authority, they still have to be appointed. So
correct.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Rivera?
Yes, thank you. Just a suggestion, as a resident and of Hartford, and as I shared earlier, I never knew about commissions prior to being in the Women's Commission. I think outreach, maybe reaching out to those communities who are on the ground, who are, on a daily basis, talking to residents and sharing and giving resources, sharing some of this information about commissions they could be a part of will be a great idea. I have shared with our chair how important it is for us to bring some of our meetings to actual neighborhoods where residents could hear about it and could just walk out their door and come into a meeting, right? Where they don't have to worry about childcare and transportation. But bringing some of this information right into their doors will be, a great thing. Maybe a mailing system where just the same way we get information about voting for different candidates on, voting time, knowing about commissions and how we get joined will be something that could really kind of bring some of those folks that are leaders and have leadership skills to the tables.
I'll respond to that. Yes, one of the things that we talked about doing and is to do maybe a constant contact media blitz of requesting emails or letting people know that you can sign up for the different boards and commissions, where to find the information, because what we want to do is get as many people in the portal that will be able to receive this information on a regular basis. And like I said, we went from 250 to over 6,000 once we had the council management piece up and running.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Commissioner Gowan-Clark.
Yeah. So in addition to alerting folks about the commissions, I'm just hoping that there's some type of description regarding the role of the commission and the expectations of, if you're going to serve on the commission, what exactly does that mean? Because I do talk to residents and they're not sure what this commission does or what that commission does. So again, making sure they understand that there's a job description and then the role of the commissioners.
Yes, one of the things that I had directed the staff person who was really out on disability right now is that on each of the page of the commission that there'll be a description, who's appointing authority, where does the power come from? Was it the state statute or is it the city ordinance and so forth? So all of that information will be there so that people will be able to find that information right on the same page where the list of the commissioners, their term, their party affiliation. I don't know if we're going to put the addresses in there. We might not. I'm not sure. We have to talk about that for privacy reasons. But we started it in this book. You see the information right here. What's the establishing authority, the membership, and ad hoc members and terms and so forth. So we want to have all that information readily available so that people can access that.
Great. Okay. So a question that I had is when will the portion of this software for the boards and commissions be rolled out? Ballpark, I guess.
Eric, you take that one.
It's gonna be done before you guys are done. So that much I
Hopefully.
know. That much I know. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. I mean, a lot of data collection. We have no emails right now. I mean, it's the 21st century, and we have no emails for any of these individuals. So each board, it comprises between 5 to 15 people. A lot of this information is incomplete. There's somewhat of a disconnect definitely a disconnect between the community, and the appointing authority in some of our minds. And, there's sometimes, the mayor's staff that does oversee some of these committees, there's even a disconnect getting the materials to us. We can't force a hand to get these materials. So we can only post or, give to the public what we have. So there seems to be, some disconnect there, but yeah, we'll have this software up and running, in a time frame, hopefully within, 60 days, so let's see.
Yeah, we're in the process right now. We actually started this late October, took a little break over the holidays. The staff person from the iCompass had some other issues, not other responsibilities. So we started back up. We actually met earlier today. We were hoping to be able to show you a demo of the boards and commission, but we didn't have that. It was quite lengthy what she had. It was like 10 minutes, and we didn't want to take your time with 10 minutes of a video, but we will hopefully have some information to you. Maybe we'll send a link to you or something, and you can share that to see how it will be beneficial to the city to have this up and running.
Great. Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one was to add. The Secretary of State has a function just like the town clerks does for each town or city. They're the keeper of records. One of the things I've noticed within the city is that there is so many different ways of getting information. If you go to the Hartford, you find out about what's going on in the zoning committee, commissions, and where boards and commissions. I think they post their when they're meeting times. It'd be really great if it's just one location. People in our city can, click on, our beautiful, city logo. And so that's what we have with the city of Connecticut. For all the different state administration, all the different state agency, they file their meeting, their notice, everything with the Secretary of State's office. And it's a one-stop shop. So I think the program that the town clerk is going to be implementing is going to be awesome for the city, and anyone can just go to our city page and find out about all the different boards and commissions and when they're meeting and look at their minutes. And I think that's going to be really valuable to the city going forward. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I don't know if you have time, Eric, if you're able to share the screen of the portal that's up and now.
I did drop the link in the chat, so I'll let the commissioners go through there and take a look. So I mean, it's pretty user friendly. It's pretty extensive. So there's a lot of ins and outs to it, but yeah, it's in there for anybody who needs it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There's also a video link that we're working to make sure that that's running, where instead of watching the whole YouTube or public access viewing of a council meeting, you'll be able to go right to the item that you're interested in, and the video will pop up with that. So it's a time stamping. We received the commitment, the equipment, and had public access hook up the equipment to their system so that we'll be able to timestamp the items in the agendas and so forth. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that for the boards and commission because it's so many of them, but for the council meetings, that feature is there.
Great. Yeah, I've used it once or twice. I've actually seen it work, and it was just it's pretty amazing. So that's great. Commissioner Smith. You are on mute, sir.
Sorry, thank you very much. I did have an opportunity to peruse the link that you guys sent, and I just want to say that it is very user friendly and it's very easy. I think that consistent with Councilwoman Surgeon said, and some of the other comments, getting the information out there is pretty much going to be the most important aspect of this. And consistent with what she said, I think if it is that it's sort of advertising the city, so it doesn't have to be necessarily specifically about these commissions, but if you advertise the city and just let people know, anything that you want to know about Hartford, go to this website. And then that's one aspect of it would be them getting information about these commissions and, everything else that's going on in the city, because I think it is very user friendly. And, you go on the website, you click on something and it takes you right to it, and the layout for the agendas, and you click on the specific committee and you get, you know exactly when there's a meeting and what's the agenda for that particular meeting. It's very, very user friendly, but I think getting the information out to the public, I don't think it necessarily needs to be something, in terms of specific about the commission, but in New York City, they do an ad, and it's a much larger city, I understand that, but you sort of do an advertisement about where you can find out information about transportation, bus services and service interruptions and things of that nature. If you have one place where everyone is used to going to get information, and this could turn into an app, by the way. I don't know if you guys have an app or, somewhere which this is so becomes very mobile friendly because a lot of people are on their phone. I think it creates greater engagement. And so when we want to send out announcement about elections and things of that nature, you may not necessarily need everyone's email. You just sort of send out this alert and they go on the website and it's scrolling at the top of the website. This is the most important issue that's going on. There's a storm coming, or election is coming up, or we have opening in these various council, various commissions. I think it will get the city to be very engaged if it is that we look at it as a collective effort as opposed to just specific to announcing or identifying vacancies in the commissions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, just thank you, Commissioner Smith. Unfortunately, all of those powers don't invest in the clerk's office. That is one of the issues that we have, but we've been working with the other departments. Hopefully, we'll be able to figure out how to get that one-stop shopping. We are hoping that as iCompass becomes more familiar, that it will become the dominant format for boards and commission and civic engagement from the legislative side of the aisle, because we are under the council, not the mayor's office. And so they have their functions and how they do stuff. So, but we're trying to work with them and with the civic engagement so that we'll be working together, not against each other.
But iCompass is a very powerful software, and it's a software that's used by a lot of government across the country, right? So what I'm suggesting, it's, rather than wasting resource where you have the clerk's office doing something, you have the mayor's office doing something, if it is that we're one city, right? So you guys are taking the initiative, you're putting all of this information on the website, it's very user friendly. Again, obviously a lot of things are easier said than done, but a collective effort to say, well, you've already have the foundation. Why can't we just channel everything through there? Maybe give you a little bit more resources, whether it's one or two other manpower or, individual staff members to come and help you with the data entry or, whatever other assistance you may need to sort of get it out there. Because again, if it is that we're talking about engagement, coming back to that point, if we have everyone have all of these different websites going, people, people will never really be fully aware of what they can do and how they can get involved and where they can get information. Because part of the issues that we have with the commissions and the voting and the council positions is that people are not engaged. And the reason why they're not engaged is sometimes it's just information overload. Right. It's not, we all focus on lack of information, but sometimes it's just information overload. But if you have, like, for instance, you're looking for something, 90% of people go to Google, right? So if it is that you're looking for something for the city of Hartford, if there's one website that you can go to, chances are you're going to learn about something else. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that they had this event. Oh, wait a minute, you'll be a good council person for serve on this particular board because you're always talking or you're always involved in this. I understand that there's a dynamic, and I appreciate your effort to try to bring that together. But I just think that it will be a great opportunity for us to try to see how best we can sort of assimilate rather than everyone trying to get information out separately.
Thank you. Thank you. We think iCompass is the best platform for that.
Attorney Mednick, did you have a comment?
I did, more of a question, and I want to follow up on Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Rivera, because I think they were both talking about the same issue in two different ways. Commissioner Rivera talked about outreach, but outreach is a cousin of the issue of having information in one place, focused and directed. And I heard the clerk say that the clerk doesn't obviously run the executive branch, but the charter can mandate certain things. The charter can require certain things and require, if you took a look at the document, I believe that the chairman provided you, there's a number of provisions in there that we talk about cooperation. We have a provision on the administrative responsibility of the clerk's office for boards and commissions, and the outreach portion of that as well. So I just wanted to emphasize that there is language that could mandate that behavior. It doesn't stop the mayor from utilizing his own communication office, but there should be one official place where everything goes. And so the members of the public get used to it. So I wanted to underscore that that position, not a position I'm taking, but there's language that can address that issue completely. I think that's it. I know what I wanted to say to the clerk. The provision that required the clerk to make sure there were clerks for every board and commission, Mr. McGregor, was not intended to expand your office so that you have enough clerks to assign. I think the objective was to make sure that every commission has somebody there so that there could be a list of all the people who are attached. You may not be doing the attaching, but if somebody in the planning office is attached to the Planning and Zoning Commission, their obligation would be to report to your office to make sure that there was a central place where everybody knew who the clerks were and that clerks were attached. So we could clarify that language. It was not intended to put an additional burden on you, except to the extent that you need to track it and make sure that every board and commission has somebody that's been assigned. But part of your responsibility may be to go to a department head and make sure that they assign somebody from their department to that function.
Thank you, Attorney Mednick, for clarifying that, and we understand that, and we just wanted to let the rest of the commission know where the issues are. It's spread out across the city in the different departments, and there's no uniformity. And that's one of the things we're trying to do is bring some uniformity, consistency, and clarity to the roles.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Commissioner DeJesus.
I must say we have to commend the town clerk's office with the advances that they've done in such a short amount of time. And I think if you look at our code, it directs almost every body or almost every department to send in a document to the town clerk's office. The problem is that as confusing as the code is causing, it is the birthplace of all this confusion. The code has not been updated in years. It's very hard to follow, very hard to understand. And if you almost want to tailor where the problem is, I don't think it's in the town clerk's office. I think it's in the code where it's not clear. And I think that's where we have to look at to make sure that we strengthen the language in our charter to make sure that that code gets updated consistently so that people can better understand it and know where to direct things. Another thing is, thank God to technology, because I remember you sometimes a few employees in there had to send 2 or 3 emails because they couldn't put that much information into an email. Some of these council agendas are about 25, 50 pages long. These are huge files. I remember how difficult it was. And now we're not putting the burden on the citizen to have, X amount of space on their email to receive this information. No, it's now in a cloud where they can access it at their own leisure. And so they don't have to have the fanciest phone to get this information or have the biggest package for data on your email. So there's a lot of progress here. I do agree with the sentiment that it all needs to be centralized. I think if you read the code, I think that's exactly where we're headed. If you read some of the subsections of this charter, it also leaves them there. Actually, some of the state statutes of some of these commissions that are overlooked by state statute, they also say the town clerk's office, but they have a huge burden to try to get all these documents electronically. So I think that's going to be the backlog. I think automatically, naturally is going to happen that the town clerk is going to be the centralized place. And I think it is right now, but I think it's a huge undertaking that they're taking at the moment, because remember, it's space, it's size of these documents that need to be all scanned in, especially all the older stuff. So they're doing some of the new stuff, but they've done a really good job. So I think naturally, I think this is going to be the place that all the information is going to be in. They're going to have the capabilities, they have the talent, and I have to say, I commend them for all that they're doing, because it's a huge undertaking. This was only a dream 3 or 4 years ago. And we're doing leaps and bounds as to how much information they can disseminate and compress it down and bring it out to the masses. It's unreal what they're doing. So thanks to technology, thanks for the forethought of the talent that is in that office. So I have to say that because you guys are spearheading this and taking the heavy load, because this is a very difficult task that you guys are undertaking. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner DeJesus. For a path forward on these certain items with regards to tracking vacancies and things like that, and this is the question to the commissioners and to the clerk's office. Does it make sense for us to push the pause button on moving forward with certain recommendations regarding requiring the clerk's office to do XYZ until the clerk's office can come back to us and show us in real life what is actually happening, and then maybe talk through some potential issues that they're still dealing with, or ways that maybe the charter process could help. That's one thought I had, but would entertain other ideas if folks have them. Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I think it's important, and obviously Clerk McGregor can comment on it. But I think it's important to sort of see where they are so that we can identify where the shortcomings are, and based upon their need, whether or not we have the authority to do anything about it, right? So he may come and say, if I had another $500,000 in my budget, I can create this wonderful system. And so, well, we may not have the authority to give you $500,000, but certainly we might be able to do other things that will direct agencies to sort of alleviate some of the issues that he may have that requires that kind of money in order for him to run his office. So I think given what they've already done and the direction that they're heading in, it probably is in our best interest to be able to understand exactly what direction we need to put in the charter based upon what they've already established, as opposed to giving them a direction, and it may not be consistent with what they've already working on in the direction that they're going in. And obviously working with the software, they're much more familiar with what the software is capable of doing. And I think learning a little bit about that may put us in the best position to say, okay, well, we don't need this archaic instruction in the charter because technology has taken us away from some of these things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Any other questions, comments? Attorney Mendick?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add to that, Mr. Chairman, you've given the clerk the language from the PowerPoint. Deals.
I forwarded over the PowerPoint. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
If they could look at that, because I'd like to keep moving the language forward as they're going through it and look at the sections, particularly on administration and outreach, filling the seats, all that stuff. If they could look at that language as they're going through to make sure that the language works or doesn't work, or whether there should be additional language, I think that would help me from a drafting perspective, if they could do that while they're going through their exercise.
Okay, great.
But that's all right with you. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do you have any comments?
Well, yeah, we've already started that, Attorney Mednick. It's right here in front of me. I've marked it up a little bit already, highlighted some stuff, so we are looking at that. And we've actually been bouncing back and forth beside myself and Mr. Lusa, what it would look like if we were to have the staff and how it would work. There's, we looked at what would the number of staff needed to staff all of the commissioners. And there's a lot of overlapping of the meetings. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 meetings going on at the same time. When you boil it down, there's 4 days a week that the boards and commissions can meet, because no one really meets on a Friday afternoon, Saturday or Sunday. 43 boards. We try to brainstorm what would that look like if it was here versus where it is. So we've been giving it a lot of thought.
And there's, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
There's one other issue that we haven't talked about.
The vacancies.
I've got a meeting tomorrow morning at ACIR, and that is how we're going to be conducting meetings as we move forward. The law, the pandemic has created a brave new world. Here we are, right? We look like the Brady Bunch right now, and this is the brave new world. And so you're also going to have to figure out how to do hybrid meetings at some point for a myriad of boards and commissions. And so that's something we don't really address either, except we do talk about electronic media that are involved in it. So that's a big issue. We're addressing that now because the temporary statute is up in April. I'm part of a group that is working on coming up with a long-standing statute. We're meeting on that tomorrow morning to address the issue of hybrid meetings. And one last question. You talked about inactive boards and commissions. And one of the issues, and I believe the vice chair brought this up, and I think it's a really salient and perceptive point that the vice chair raised, is the status of the code of ordinances and the archaic status of the code of ordinances. But if you have what you call inactive boards and commissions, has anybody given any thought to whether they should exist? Whether somebody should think about, we can create boards and commissions. Has anybody thought about basically dismantling boards and commissions so that they're not on the books? If they're not meeting, if they're inactive, you'll clean up the vice chair's code of ordinances by knocking a bunch of them out of the code of ordinances. I don't know if any thought has been given to that at all.
Yeah, we think about it all the time,
Right.
but it's above our pay grade to make that decision. Maybe some language in the charter concerning that. Like I said, I count approximately 15 that are inactive, and some of the ones that are active are not that active. So
when they're inactive, are you saying that they haven't met?
They haven't met. We have nothing on them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No.
All right. That's good to know, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, I wanted to jump on that point.
Just to chime in quickly on Attorney Mendick's comment of the hybrid meetings, we actually have a meeting tomorrow with a company to help do hybrid meetings for the whole. I mean, it's going to cover council. It's going to cover, the committees. It could even in theory cover these boards and commissions. With this chip shortage, we're running into some difficulties there for the technology. But the grant money through the user engagement aspect of it, we look to build out council chambers into a professional hybrid meeting, laboratory where a lot of these meetings can happen. So.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Just a comment. We have been forward thinking, trying to make sure that we have a very professional system here. And we've done a lot of the groundwork. City government moves a little slow, and then we had the chip shortage also. So like Mr. Lucia said, we'll be meeting with them in the morning. Hopefully we'll get that ironed out where they will start to upgrade our system there and improve on it. And we've been working with Hartford Public Access to make sure that whatever is needed there to make sure that it's all done in a very professional manner.
Great. Okay, so I think we've got some consensus, if I'm not mistaken, that we can come back to the clerk's office at a later date and maybe get a demonstration of the full capabilities of the technology, and they can give us a better sense of how we can help through the charter to empower them and to help them get the word out about boards and commissions and all the different aspects. One other semi-separate topic that I just wanted to bring up quickly is this was also in Attorney Mendick's slide deck, is the question of vacancies. And the charter is currently silent on the procedures for what happens when someone resigns from a board or commission. So Mr. Clerk and Eric, do you have, I'm sure there's a process in place. What is the current process in place right now when someone resigns from a board or commission? When does that become official? Does it happen as soon as they say in a meeting, I'm resigning, or when they furnish a letter, or does it have to actually come to you and get stamped?
Yes, the letter has to come to us before it becomes official.
Okay, so if someone were to resign this evening and the minutes didn't come out for 2 weeks, and then the minutes were approved and finally made it to your office and were stamped, at that point, the resignation would be effective.
I'm not sure if we will accept it in the minutes. I think it needs to be a letter of resignation to make it official. We could.
Go ahead,
Eric. You've been
as past practice. It's always been you need an official letter saying I so and so resigned. If you're from council, if you're from commission, if you want to withdraw your name from the ballot, stuff like that. So as past practice, there's no guidance on this, but as past practice, good or bad, that is the mechanism.
Okay, Commissioner DeJesus.
Going back to the code, there are some commissions that they base it on attendance. And so there's some mechanism in there, but again, because it's so confusing and there's no synergy between all the different commissions, it makes it very difficult to kind of follow all of those nuances of if this is a commission that if you miss 3 days, you automatically resign. There's nuances if you are in a party, some of them, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you affiliate to a different or unaffiliate from that party, you also automatically resign. So there's a lot of those nuances that is done. And that is something that we delegated through the charter because we're giving the authority to the legislative body to create legislation through the code in order to make these commissions happen. And so as time goes on, we've only given the authority for them to create commissions. I think the definition should be a little bit different. A lot of these are really ad hoc committees. They're not really were meant to be long-term committees. And I think somewhere in there needs to be clarified is it this is a short-term commission that is going to look at a specific issue and give that option to the legislative body to have different options of how to approach that issue. And it's just compiled after years, and these become, they're very important for the past 8 years. Once the issue is resolved or mute, it just they kind of leave. And so there has to be some type of connection between what is there and then what happens. And I think it just goes back to where we, when we're doing these language and charter, is that when we give this authority to the legislative body, as they fluctuate, they all have different priorities, and then they build upon each other's priorities. So one may be focused on one issue, the other one is focused on this issue, and they start building committees that kind of, a lot of them, if you go through that list, some of them can actually be swallowed up by another one. And I think they're kind of talking about the same issue, but they're kind of not talking to each other. A lot of them can be, I think you can see count 1, 2, or 3, they could become one. And so I think that needs to be done in order to kind of quantify the power of those committees. So there's a lot of little things that need to be looked at before we move forward, and actually make it a little bit more standard as to if it's going to be attendance, is it going to be by resignation, is it going to be by party affiliation, or is it all going to be all 3? I think that is something that we're going to have to do through the charter. So it could be a little bit more uniform per se, or it could be done by ordinance, whichever one the body decides to do it.
Attorney Mednick.
Yeah, the charter already, and we should look at that. And I was going to ask the clerk if he could get us over the complete list of boards and commissions as it currently exists. I don't care if it's on paper or electronically, but already we do have provisions in the charter for standardization. But to your point, Mr. Vice Chair, the Code of Ordinances hasn't been touched in any significant way including since the 2002 charter. I was hired in the mid-aughts to do it, and the one administration wanted to do it, the next administration decided not to do it, so it never got done. And as you know, when we were looking at the finance provisions, the budget provisions, there's still references in the charter in the ordinances to the city manager. So they haven't been touched. They really do need to be touched. But I think it would be useful to see a comprehensive list of all the boards and commissions in town. They should not have, if there are remaining appointment provisions that are inconsistent with the charter, those need to be fixed, because the charter was designed in 2002 to fix that. If it wasn't done, we're really running kind of a haphazard system right now.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner DeJesus and Steve. All right. Any other questions or comments for the clerk's office? Commissioner Smith.
I just have a really quick sort of practical question. We were talking about resignation. I just wanted to know when the resignation reaches the clerk, are you at that point in time empowered to sort of send out a notification about a vacancy, or is that something that is done someplace else? Like, how does that work?
Well, traditionally, we accept the resignation. It's up to the appointing authority. We will forward it to appointing authority, and then they would make the announcement.
Okay, that's something that we may want to consider if it is that we have a system where you are sort of notifying the public about, opportunities. We may want to be able to make that an automatic sort of a situation where vacancy is announced, and then, like you said, you already sort of forward the application to the appropriate parties, but sort of put that information out there right away so that we don't have a lag in the vacancy. Just a thought that crossed my mind. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Lusa, thank you both very much for coming on tonight. It's been incredibly helpful, and we really appreciate all the hard work that you both are engaged in and your office is engaged in. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of months and giving the new portal a test drive. And so with that, we will bid you farewell. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank each and every one of you for your diligence in helping to move the city forward and into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, folks. So we are on to item number 5, the commission discussion regarding next steps on boards and commissions issues. And so as we discussed last week, we were going to have this discussion with the council members. We're going to have the discussion with the clerk's office, and now is an opportunity for the members of the commission to highlight some of the things that they'd like to address through this process and in this chapter. I know we've discussed some of them tonight already, but if there are things that haven't been discussed that we can raise up for Attorney Mednick and that we can agree on this evening, I think that would be helpful. So I'll entertain comments now. Then I have a couple if they're not brought up. So Commissioner DeJesus, you have the floor.
So I think resoundingly we heard loud and clear that there needs to be some type of change in this area. So in this chapter, subsection, what is it, section 1 here, there is area in section H here, compensation prohibited. No member of any appointing board of which service is uncompensated as of June 1st, 2002 shall receive compensation for services as such member. I feel that language should be removed or retweaked. I think I concur in the sense that this can be misconstrued if the people are wanting to be proactive and say we're going to provide a commissioner a bus card so he can transport himself or herself or her family or their family to the meeting. And so I think there should be language that it shouldn't be that harsh. I don't think that should be considered as a compensation, but I think it should be something that we should look at. Actually, I would just say remove it completely and allow the flexibility for the legislative body and the executive branch to help in getting people into these meetings. I know that getting into the community is one option, but that does not, I think, solve the issues of recruiting. I think that's in the direction. I think that the administration and the council sounds like they want to be more proactive and be able to get more diversified candidates to the table. And I think that language there is kind of obsolete. I think it should be removed. That we're not saying we're going to give them a salary, but I think there should be other means of helping them attend these meetings. And so I think we should do away with that.
Okay. One thought on that is, and it's a question for Attorney Mednick. I mean, compensation isn't defined anywhere. So compensation could be, to Commissioner DeJesus' point, it's too much too broad.
Yeah.
And so a bus card could be considered compensation, which is problematic, I think, to his point. So
you could provide reimbursements or defraying of expenses that are necessary expenses to attend meetings and things like that could be excluded from the term compensation, because I think the objective there is that no one should be salaried to be on a board or commission. I think that's the intent of that language, but it's so broad that it could be problematic if you wanted to do some outreach, even if you were to provide food for people at a meeting for free. So I think we can work on some language there if that's the intent of the commission.
Does anyone have issues with working on that? Okay, seeing none, it looks like we have a consensus to work on that compensation provision. Any other things that folks would like to see addressed? Okay. I have a small list that I can bring up to folks, and a lot of them were just things that were listed in Attorney Mendick's PowerPoint. I did think that allowing or requiring public comment at all meetings or at certain meetings of boards and commissions, and putting some type of standard for public engagement at all levels. And so ensuring that you can't have a board or commission that doesn't hold public comment. I think some standard there makes a lot of sense. That was one of Attorney Mendick's recommendations. I want to see how folks feel about that. Okay.
It's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Okay. The compensation provision. We have some of the diversity provisions that Attorney Mednick put into his presentation. I think it's slide number 14. So representation on boards and commissions. So the mayor and other appointing authorities are required to consider appointments to ensure that to the full extent possible, the composition of boards and commissions reflect the diversity of the residents in the geographic areas of the city. And there are some other diversity provisions that Attorney Mendick suggested. I think there was some consensus. It seemed like there was consensus before when we discussed that. I'm seeing some heads nodding. Does anyone disagree? Okay.
No disagreement.
Okay. And then a lot of the other items that I have listed on my list have already come up tonight. So I guess the only other thing I have is the mayor can remove individuals for persistent absence in a board or commission. And I don't think there's any definition of what a persistent absence is. So I know Attorney Mednick, you're going to come up with a definition section to the charter. Maybe a definition for what a persistent absence is would be helpful.
And maybe you get that it could include the mayor makes a suggestion for removal and the council votes on it. That way, it's I don't think anyone will have a problem with that, but that way you involve the council and everyone knows that this person is not being removed for political reasons just because they didn't attend.
Right. Right. Okay. Commissioner Gallon Clark and then Commissioner DeJesus.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you saw the comment that Councilwoman Surgeon put in the chat regarding boards that have not met.
So yeah, I will read it to the group. So Councilwoman Surgeon said, I would like to see if something can be done if boards have not met, that they could be deactivated. So that seems reasonable to me. And quite frankly, a non-political solution to doing away with a commission that may have been put in place for good intentions, to Commissioner DeJesus's point, 20 years ago, and then for whatever reason the problem is solved, but folks may not want to put their names on an ordinance saying we're going to do away with such and such commissions. So having a natural sunset of unactive boards maybe makes sense.
Yeah, that's I was going to actually recommend a sunset provision. I don't know what the right time frame would be, 5 years, 7 years, so that commissions would have to come up for renewal, so that if they're not renewed, they would be sunsetted. That may be a mechanism for dealing with it. The council could at any time eliminate boards and commissions. So if they're not meeting, I think that the clerk has done this project where he's put together the list of inactive groups, may spur the council on to taking a look at all their boards and commissions and coming up with uniform standards and eliminating some of them. but the concept of a sunset so that you, every board and commission has to be renewed after 7 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever the, that's more of a business and political judgment. I'd leave it up to you. It might be really good. You don't want to have a situation, though. You want to be careful about that, and you may have some permanent boards and commissions. You don't want the council to get rid of the audit commission because the audit commission may be doing something that is particularly difficult for both the mayor and council. So you may want to take a look at that as well. The pension commission, for example, is a special act commission that sits in the charter. So you want to make sure there would be some exceptions to that. But I would say that any board or commission that's created by the council, unless mandated by the charter, if the charter mandates it, you can't get rid of it. But if it's created by ordinance, it would be subject to a sunset.
What do folks think of that? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. Then the Corporation Council, Steve, raised a number of issues. Section 1F says, since an ethics ordinance hasn't been adopted, the language should be updated to reflect that. And he suggested that we take a look at Section 2A, the Internal Audit Commission. So his question was, are the provisions with respect to the appointment of one member by council from a list of the 10 largest owners of taxable property really relevant to the work of the commission? And he stated that it's become cumbersome to find and maintain that person in that role. And so should there be different qualifications for that member? So that may be something we need to explore as well. If anyone disagrees, let me know. Okay.
I imagine that would fall in the category that you're going to be taking a look at how you're going to be appointing boards and commissions. And I think you would probably tackle this at that point.
Yep, makes sense. Yep. And then his final question was, should we add or their designee to Section 2B, which has to do with the committee on abatement of taxes and assessments. So giving the committee or their designee certain roles rather than just the committee. So we can go back and take a look at that unless anyone disagrees. Commissioner DeJesus.
So there is a subsection right below that these are permanent audit. The internal audit is one of them. The committee of abatement of taxes and assessment and the board of appeals is also a permanent standing committee, and followed by the planning and zoning. Those are all in the charter and protected by the charter. But I think I do agree with Corporation Council. Some language needs to be clarified on that. Going back to the Section 1 of that charter, the removal powers. My concern with the high degree of issues that we have of crime in the city, there's people that may have I'm almost a little nervous about this because there may be some people who may have had convictions of a felony or a misdemeanor in the past that we may need their expertise if we're doing a committee for reentry or so on and so forth.
We could fix that. There's a fix for that.
Good.
While in office. Not intended to exclude somebody who may have had a problem in the past. I ran into this in another charter, and we fixed it by simply stating that if you engage in a crime and are convicted of a crime while in office, you're subject to removal. So if you qualify for appointment and you were a felon or misdemeanant, the mayor can't remove you for anything that occurred prior to that time. You've been approved regardless of that. So we can fix that very easily by putting a clause in there to provide that protection.
Perfect. And I think that's important because we have a large population that are reentering our community, and that I think they're huge assets. They always were huge assets, very talented, that I think it would be great to be sitting on our boards, even though they've had, they paid their dues, some of them already. So I think that will be a great point to clarify.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner DeJesus. It's a great point. Commissioner Smith.
Oh, thank you for Attorney Mednick. And again, I'm assuming when you said the mayor can't remove you, I'm assuming that there's nothing that precludes them from being able to serve on the commission. Right,
No,
correct? I just wanted to,
correct. Yeah.
I know that it's just sort of
Yep.
understood within the context of your response, but
Yeah. And we need to look at that provision because this talks about the mayor initiating it. I believe that ultimately the council would remove, but I want to make sure it says that somewhere in the charter. It doesn't say it in that section. But there's no bar to people who have been convicted of crimes, misdemeanor or felony, from serving on a board or commission.
Thank you. Your last comment, you said the council removed. So you're saying that the mayor could identify someone, but the council ultimately makes a decision? Is that what
the mayor initiates the proceeding, the council
ultimately votes on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we're going to have to look at that depending on how we're going to deal with appointments.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. That's a lot. So I think unless anyone has any other suggestions, Commissioner Gallon-Clark.
Chair Wolf, I don't have a suggestion. I have a question regarding the commission schedule and topics that you sent out.
Sure.
And I just want to know, I don't know if you can pull it up on the screen, but I just want to know, for instance, like the things that we talked about today, where do they appear on the schedule that you sent? The things we heard about, we didn't really talk about them in depth today. Where do they appear on that schedule? And then the things that we talked about last month, where do they appear? So I just need a little clarification.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we go forward, when you see on the commission schedule, I don't know if I can post it on my screen, but the items that are going to be that are listed on the commission schedule are kind of the new items of discussion that will be coming up, and items that so there will be say, at our next meeting we're discussing the I think it's the treasurer's office. Mm-hmm. There will likely be additional topics that come up in that meeting. For example, Attorney Mednick will likely be done with the budget sections. And so that would be added as an agenda item. And so it's really dependent on the workflow of the committee, the commission, and the drafting that Attorney Mednick can get done. So I hope does that kind of answer your question?
That does. I just don't want to lose sight of some of the things that we heard tonight, and when do we really dig in deep and talk about some of those things? Sure.
And one thing I do want to make a note on, and we can take a slight diversion here, but I will note that in the commission schedule that we put out, there's space for flex dates, and so boards and commissions, there may be, we may have enough to have a completely other conversation about certain things, and we may need to add an additional meeting, within the month of January, within the month of February, and March, to make sure that we're getting everything done and we're not forgetting anything that we've covered here. And so, we're going to be cognizant of that. And, I want to be clear, if anyone thinks that there are issues that we're missing or that we discussed that that need to come back up, that have been lost by the wayside somehow, feel free to email me or the entire commission to flag them for us, so that we don't lose sight of those.
Just to give you, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
a sense of how we're working on this. I'm going to start, even after tonight's discussion, to begin to plot out modifications of the board and commission section. So I'm not waiting for final. You reached some consensus on some broad issues today. The clerk brought up some issues that he thought were useful. The chair brought up some issues that he thought was useful. So I'm going to start that process so that I don't wait until the end. And what I'd like to be able to present to you at some point is, based on all the information that's come in, just give you a draft of a red line to show you what the section would look like, by including everything plus the kitchen sink, unless I've gotten a sense from you that some idea is really odious and you don't want to put it in there at all. So my sense is a lot of stuff that was discussed tonight, where people were nodding their heads, is going to find its way into a draft. You will then look at that draft. If I've missed anything, I'll leave it up to you to tell you, Mednick, you missed it. But my hope is I will capture most things in a draft, and you will then have a document in front of you. And I would hope we're going to deal with the budget hopefully at the next session, and there'll still be some unanswered questions in the budget section. And I'm hoping we'll get to the boards and commissions soon thereafter, although we may do it in segments, because you have some big issues to address as well. But on the procedural things, I'm going to try to move pretty quickly, with the permission of the chair, on starting to address what I consider to be the procedural aspects of the board and commission. I won't address the issue of how you're going to appoint, who's going to appoint, and those kinds of things, but I want to get a jump on the procedural issues, and maybe we can even resolve those before we resolve the more substantive political issues.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on from section 5 or item number 5? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item number 6, council presentation regarding chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the charter. So Steve, I will put it in your hands.
So I'm going to walk you through these sections. A number of these, I think, were raised by the Corporation Council, and the sections that the chair raised on the boards and commissions. As I'm going through chapter by chapter, with your permission, I am taking into account the Corporation Council's advice on every section. So just assume, and when you see the draft, you'll see where the idea came from. I will be referring to the Corp Council's recommendations when I go through the chapters. This section 3 of chapter 2 deals with benefit assessments. It's a section that's been there for a long period of time. It probably goes back to a special act. It seems to address almost personalized assessments, as if somebody had a sidewalk built for them and the community can come back and charge them for the sidewalk. I think that I'm not sure this is really something that is necessary. The Corp Council asked whether there was an ordinance implementing the process. The closest I could find is the ordinance that follows, which is 32-44 through 5053. But I also think if you go through the documents that I provided, under the scope of municipal powers, I believe that the municipality has the ability by ordinance to regulate modes of assessment, collection of taxes and assessments, not otherwise provided for. And so it just seems to me that unless people feel that this is a ancient provision that they'd like to keep in the charter, I think there's the ability. I did not get the impression from the Corporation Council, and I will double check with them before I formally recommend a deletion of this section. If it hasn't been used, and no one could imagine an immediate use for it, if a problem were to develop, the council could adopt an ordinance under the state statutes to address the issue and to alleviate the problem. there are statutes that allow for something like this in special service districts and special business districts, because in those districts you have a real nexus between a benefit that is given by the city and some expectation of reimbursement by the property owner over some period of time on the special assessment. So my general view on this section is I'm not sure it adds anything. It is not such a unique power that you can't otherwise exercise it by ordinance. And so my sense is that it was probably placed in a special act in a period of time where there was no Home Rule Act. And so there was no provision for that. There was a general provision of authority. So that's that section. So I don't know if everybody has a feel for that or strong opinions on that. If so, I will just check with.
Yeah, if there's no objection, I think we can move forward, Steve, with you reaching out to Corp Counsel, confirming that we can remove that, and then proceed that way. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next section, I think, is section 5, which is on page 9 of the document that we sent out yesterday. Oh, no, there's a typo in here. This deals with the power to adopt regulatory ordinances. Again, this is a provision that addressed a fine and a maximum imprisonment period for people who violate regulatory ordinances of the city. So my advice is, if you want to send somebody to prison for 30 days for violating a provision of our ordinances, you should keep this provision, because the general statutes don't permit you to imprison anybody. I mean, you have to go to court, obviously. Attorney Smith would be defending somebody to make sure they weren't imprisoned for violating an ordinance. But in order to do that, you would keep this provision. You have absolute authority to adopt ordinances, and that's it says statutes pertaining to benefit assessments. It's not. It's statutes pertaining to regulatory ordinances. You have the ability to do that. You do have the Corp Counsel is right. The max now on a fine is $250, but there really is no criminal element to it. So if you want to maintain the criminal element, we should keep the provision. If not, you have this ability to adopt ordinances in accordance with the Home Rule Act. I'll double check with Corp Counsel. My sense was that they did not feel this was a section that we should keep here, but I will double check with them to make sure that they're comfortable with that.
Commissioner DeJesus.
So if we could do that, I know this came up when we were doing a few ordinances with penalties. If it needs to be kept, can we link the state statute with this provision, that it kind of goes hands in hand? As the state statute fluctuate, we're able to do it, whichever one is higher. I think there's some provisions in here that talk about that we use. I think we do that for the mayor's salary, that we link it to a Superior Court judge or something like that. So if we can link that, if it has to stay, to link it so that if the state goes up, the fines also go up with that statute.
We can do that, or we can just eliminate it. It's your call. The major reason for having this provision, again, was before the Home Rule Act. There was no authority to adopt an ordinance. This is the section that gave you authority to adopt ordinances. Title VII now gives you broad authority to adopt ordinances. So I'm happy to modify this section and eliminate the $100 reference, and simply say that it would be violations enforceable as set in an amount as set forth in the general statutes. So we can keep the language. Do you want to keep the criminal penalty? Is that your point? Because there's no other reason to, Mr. Vice Chair, I'm trying to get a feel for why we would keep it for any reason other than the criminal penalty, because that's the reason you would keep it.
I would still, I know that this would probably most likely automatically go to community court, but I'll think leaving it there and hearing exactly where the corporation counsel is going on this will be super important for the body to really determine if it's something that they're, see where their head is on this one. But I would probably leave it. That would be my gut feeling until we get some information from corporation counsel to lead us as to why they feel is best to remove anything. I mean, it's hard to get something onto a charter. It should also be as hard to remove it. So if it's not something that we really need, then we can get it done. But it's really hard. Somebody worked really hard to get this body into a charter. So I want to make sure that that's respected.
Yeah, no, I got that. But to emphasize the point, this is a provision that was adopted probably by a special act before there was a home rule act. So, and you had to have this provision in the charter, otherwise you had no ability to adopt ordinances, is what it came
Yeah,
back.
and we've done some hiccups with this because when we had the situation with the register of voters, we had removed and tweaked certain issues in the charter that eventually actually took away the power of city council removing an elected official while in office. So that's why, yeah, the judge said we did not have the authority to remove an elected official. There's poor case law on that. So I think I brought that up like one of the first two meetings, if we could look into that to see what was it that we removed that took away that authority from us. And actually the register of voter at that time was able to stay in office because we did not have the authority to remove an elected official. And it was based on information that we removed, I think it was.
All right, I'll take a look at that. The as I've always told people, removal of elected officials is tricky. You can't do recall. There's very clear law on that. And I've always told people, even though I think that it's worth trying to put a removal provision in, that's a due process-based removal provision, you may run into the same problem. And I do want to take a look at that Hartford case at some point. I've been trying to, I got to see if I can get my hands on that case and take a look at it and see what it says. But I'll talk to the court counsel about this provision as well, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And what I'll try to do maybe for the next meeting is to come up with drafts that will show you what the result is based on the court counsel discussion. And unless, you know, what I'll do with section 5 is I'll recraft it to make sure it comports with, it doesn't have a dollar amount, but it references the state, whatever maximum amount is permitted by the state. And for the time being, leave the imprisonment provision in there, but I'll talk to court counsel and see what they want to do. And then I'll leave it up to you to debate the final issue on section 5. Okay, the next one is register our voters, which is on page 10 and 11 of this document. And the way the statute works, and it's really ultimately up to you, and you really don't need to modify the charter to do this, is the charter is consistent with the state statute that says you shall have 2 registrars of voters. The statute also permits an expansion of that if you elect somebody who is not of a major party, and it becomes a it's actually not discretionary, it's almost mandatory, so that if you end up having a quote minor party candidate who gets more votes than a major party candidate, the major party candidate who comes in third shall also be declared elected registrar of voters. It's a very strange statute. So I don't think there's any reason to change the charter. I think the statute governs this. And if you find yourself in that situation, you could always figure out, I'll let Howard Rifkin figure out how to do it, or you end up in court where everybody battles it and tries to figure it out. But I don't think you need to do anything to the charter on the basis of that provisions, which is 9-190. And I'd be curious to see, you know, what Attorney Kennedy, Attorney Smith, any of the other lawyers on this group, the benefit of all these lawyers to second guess me to see what their thoughts are on that. But that's my reading of 9-190. It looks
you leave it alone. I mean, Hartford's just been an unfortunate situation for some time to have 3 registered voters. I mean, we tried to do what we did back when Ronald and I served on the council. We lost that court case, which I was shocked at when we tried to remove. The statute controls. I mean, it's me trying to change it's a waste of time.
Yep, that's my judgment on it, Commissioner. So that's it on those, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, Steve. I just have one other small, as I was looking through my notes on chapter 3, I noticed, so if everyone could take a look at their charter, it's chapter 3, section 4, subsection C2. It's entitled Filling Council Vacancies. So it says a vacancy in the council from whatever cause arising shall be filled by majority party of the council within 60 days following the vacancy, provided any vacancy shall be filled by appointment of a person of the same political party as the appointee's predecessor. And then it says an appointment made after the expiration of 60 days shall nonetheless be valid. So it leads me to question, why do we have a 60-day time limit if the appointments made after the 60 days are valid? So I didn't really understand it. Steve, do you have any sense as to what that could mean, why that's there? It just doesn't make sense.
I hate to suggest that I missed it or that somebody else missed it in a prior iteration. I'd have to look at this and see if this was just a pre-existing section. This is the section the Councilwoman Surgeon was talking about, where she wanted to have more time than the 60 days, by the way, just for the record. I think that sentence can be eliminated. It eliminates the urgency of the appointment and the action. And actually with that sentence, Councilwoman Surgeon has what she'd like, but it would be kind of an internal conflicting violation of the charter, a violation without impact. So I would recommend that whatever time frame you have, you should eliminate that sentence. If you move from 60 to 90 days, you should eliminate that sentence. If you leave from 60 to 75 or 60 to 45, you should eliminate that sentence. It doesn't make any sense to have it if you're saying it doesn't have any effect in the same.
But this just pertains to council vacancies, right?
Oh, these are council vacancies.
Yeah.
These are not appointments to boards and commissions. That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Do you think that would, sorry. Do you think they were trying to put in like a good cause provision? So for instance, if there was a reason why it could not have been done within the 60-day period, that they weren't completely blocked from allowing someone to, is that?
We could have easily, it's a good point, Commissioner, but we could have easily put good faith or good, we could have put language in there to make that clear. I have no idea. I can go back and look at my notes.
It hasn't been respected in the past. We had a resignation when I was on council, and it took probably almost 3 months to have it filled. We had several fights over that appointment. That's when Bob Painter got reappointed to the city council because he was the only person who could get 5 votes. And that fight went on. We tried to appoint Dave McDonald at one point. That didn't go through. It was a nightmare. So I don't know where the 60, that provision clearly has not been respected in the past.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, it's and how do you enforce it? What do you basically say? Do you say to the council you can't fill it?
Right, exactly.
Get it done within 60 days.
And that wouldn't hold up in court. I mean, there's no way. I mean,
I agree. I mean, it's a very strange provision. Other elements of it make sense. Time frame doesn't make a lot of sense because I have provisions to Councilwoman Surgeon's point that she was making on boards and commissions that try to make sure that mayors make appointments to boards and commissions. Very often you have situations where a mayor takes forever and basically lets a commission go empty. And I've put provisions, we did it in the Waterbury Charter, we had it in the Hamden Charter, that they're going to actually tomorrow morning, we're going to resurrect the Hamden Charter. And if the council then doesn't act on it within a certain period of time, the Board of Commission gets to make their appointments to their own commission that get approved by the council. The idea there is you clearly have penalties. If the mayor loses his appointment, the council gets it. The council doesn't do it, they lose it. The Board and Commission gets it. At that point, God knows if the Board and Commission doesn't appoint itself, appoint members to their Board and Commission, who knows where it goes. This, you're right. I don't know what, there's no penalty because you can't, if the vacancy occurs, I guess the penalty, what you could do if you wanted to, Commissioner, is you could say if the appointment is not made within 60 days, there has to be a special election.
Oh, I don't want that expense on the city.
I understand, but I'm just saying that would be the only way to do it. Or
yeah, I think people are thinking about this now because we've got an impending resignation on the city council. But yeah, I mean, it was incredibly hard to get 5 votes on a. I mean, people were literally fighting over that appointment in the back room. It was amazing how that. Yeah, it was kind of funny because we appointed Corey Brinson before that. He had replaced Fannie Wilson, but then the next appointment for the minority seat was an absolute war. So the time provision needs to be completely removed because you have no idea when it's going to be done. You can't take away people's right to have their representation. They voted on somebody. It's not their fault that that person resigned. Same political party obviously makes sense. Mm-hmm. The funny thing about that is that the majority party, in this case, the Democratic Party, could actually appoint the minority party representative with no input from the minority party whatsoever, because it's just 5 votes.
That's pretty standard.
Oh, I understand it's standard. I just think it's absolutely bizarre that the majority party then could basically just appoint their own stooge for as long as they get the own party correct, Republican, gotcha. Independent, whatever it is. Which I've always been a little when I was on council, I was fine with that. If you're just sitting in this chair now, it's probably not exactly the best thing, but I don't know if there's any way to get around it. So,
all right.
Yeah. And I just want to make abundantly clear the thing that I'm concerned about is that you've got the 60-day deadline and then there's not really a deadline. So why do we have a 60-day deadline? So any of the other sections, I'm not interested in making any changes there. It just seemed there's this inconsistency with a deadline that doesn't really exist. And to your point, Commissioner Kennedy, hasn't been respected, because why would they respect it?
And how could you enforce it? Again, there's no, if somebody says, well, okay, therefore you have a council of 8. Next thing you know, someone's running in the court saying you've just denied my right, my representation.
So are folks comfortable with striking the 60-day time limit? Is that where we're at? Do we need to take another look at it? Do we need to, where are folks at? I'm
okay with striking it. The political process will move at the appropriate speed. I think at some point they have to appoint somebody because they can't just leave it vacant. But I don't know what kind of time frame you've got to put on that. I mean, you don't want them to leave it vacant for like a year and a half, right? That's the same process as denying someone their representation. But putting a hard time frame of 60 days, I don't know if that's realistic.
If I can, through the chair.
Yes.
So some of this, if you look at the appointing powers of the mayor when he is appointing a department head or an appointee, it also carries that 60-day philosophy. So if council does not act on that appointment that the mayor has introduced, that automatically, by their lack of acting on the issue, that appointee or that department head gets to be the department head, right? So I think this is kind of a branch of that idea that 60 days pretty much is the okay amount to have a fill in a position or for an appointment. So I think that's where the 60 days goes. I think there has to be some type of mechanism to make sure that it gets filled at a timely fashion. I would beg to try to change something until we can come up with a mechanism to make sure that that position is filled as quickly as possible. And I think that's where the 60 days is coming in, to put in a little urgency to the body to make sure that there is, and this is, planning and zoning has alternates. There's no alternates in the on council. Also, at one point, we had the aldermans and council members in the early 1900s here. We had two chambers, one in the function room and one in our council room. So, you had two bodies that would talk to each other and help each other. But now there isn't no mechanism to do that. I think there has to be some type of urgency to make sure that position gets filled. I think that's where the 60 days come from, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so is there some standard that exists elsewhere to, for filling?
You have standards in other places where you have appointments that are made. Actually, sometimes mayors make appointments to council vacancies, and the same standard that Vice Chair De Jesus was referring to. If the council doesn't approve it within a certain period of time, it's automatically approved. But in a 4-year term scenario, you might have a situation, if they don't get around to filling the vacancy, where there would be a special election in the off-year election, so that if there is a vacancy, there would be an automatic election that takes place at the next general election, so that you can't have a vacancy that would be more than 2 years if somebody were to vacate their position early in their term. I've seen provisions also where there's an appointment for a period of time, even in a 2-year cycle, and a special election. But I take the point that Commissioner Kennedy was making about adding additional expense. But one way to address it in the 4-year context is to make sure that if a position remains vacant, that it would be subject to being filled at a special election at the next general municipal election.
Okay,
That's reasonable.
What do other folks think about that idea? If we want, I think it probably makes sense to maybe put this issue on ice and revisit it when we have additional commissioners on here. I know many of them are going to be watching and making a decision, or trying to come to a consensus tonight on what we do with filling vacant council seats. Is I originally brought it up because I just thought it was inconsistent, but
I won't do anything. What I'll do is I'll take a look at other towns. I'll see what cities do with vacancies.
Great.
So you'll have a basis to make a decision.
Okay. All right.
I owe all of you, but it was Commissioner Galen Clark who asked me to update the schedule. So I'll make sure I get the updated schedule. I was focusing on these other things to get ready for the meeting tonight. So you'll have that soon.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns with chapters 2 or 3? I know it's getting late, and I appreciate everyone's diligence this evening. All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, or actually, without objection, we'll stand adjourned at 9:18 p.m.
The minutes, we didn't vote on the minutes.
You don't have a quorum.
We don't have a quorum, so we're gonna have to wait.
Sorry.
Yeah. We were one short.
Okay. Attorney Mednick and also the chair, I just want you to know, I didn't find the actual case, but I posted an article about the removal of the registrar. So that may lead you to the case, the actual.
Yeah, thank you. If you could, I tried to write down, I don't subscribe to the current, I hate to admit that on a Hartford commission. If you could send me that by email, I'd appreciate it, because I couldn't open it up.
Okay, no problem. I will try to send you.
I'll send you
Did
a
you-
copy of it. It's in law.com. I think there's some commentary on that too.
All right,
So
that's great.
It's,
Yeah,
what is
that-
it, Olga Vasquez? Is it
versus City of Hartford versus Kennedy versus DeJesus. Yeah, that one versus Hartford.
oh yes, yes. I remember. I couldn't believe we lost it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll find it.
It was not my intention to open up any old wounds. I was just trying to be helpful in terms of the case law. I apologize.
It's over.
I consider it to be an educational experience, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, without objection, we'll stand adjourned at 9:19. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.